There we go. Okay. Here we go. My name is Leah Jaramillo. I am going to be facilitating the meeting today. This meeting is a public hearing for UDOT, Provo City, and Brigham Young University combined project to realign the intersection of Canyon Road and University Avenue. A couple of ground rules before we get started. Oops, sorry about that. We've lost a slide. Couple of rules before we get started. All participants will be muted while we have a presentation from our project team. We'll go ahead and introduce our panelists after this. We'll take questions and comments in the chat. You may also provide comments to the project team via email or on the project website through January the 6th. So please feel free to do that as well. Again, this meeting is being recorded and we'll provide a link to the recording on the project website after the meeting as well. So once again, for the folks who just joined us, this is the public hearing for Canyon Road at University Avenue realignment. I'm going to turn my presentation off for a minute. We'll introduce the team and then we'll jump right back into the presentation. So again, I'm Leah Jaramillo. I'm facilitating the meeting. Tyrell, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tyrell Edwards. I'm the UDOT project manager on the project.
Thank you. Tyler?
My name is Tyler Turner. I'm with Civil Science, a consultant engineering firm. We are assisting UDOT and Provo with the design.
Nick?
My name is Nick Bjorkman. I'm the lead design engineer with Civil Science on the project.
Thank you. Jeff?
I'm Jeff Dupay. I'm the communication manager for our region office here in Orem for UDOT.
Gordon?
Gordon Haight with Provo City.
And Oli?
I am Ole Smith, Vice President for Physical Facilities at Brigham Young University.
Thank you. Welcome to the folks that have just joined us. Again, I'll just repeat. We'll have a brief presentation from the project team. We'll walk through the design. We'll take questions in the chat anytime, and we'll just kind of follow them in order, more or less, as they tend to kind of lump together by topic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over again to Tyrell, who's going to give us a quick overview. There we go.
All right. Well, the quick overview for the project is as I'm sure you're all aware, the old Provo High School campus has been incorporated into Brigham Young University's campus. It's currently in use for classes, and we anticipate as classes are going on there, there's more traffic. We're seeing quite a few more pedestrians crossing currently, and we expect that to just continue to increase in the future. Those crossings are spread throughout the day as students move back and forth between both sides of the campus. The project goals, the first goal we had on the project is to improve the safety of this intersection. We're going to do that by making crossing locations clearer, more visible, and more efficient by shortening the crossing time. We also want to make left turns more predictable by directing them to the signal and adjusting the traffic signal timings to better accommodate the increasing number of pedestrians on the road. And we also want to keep traffic moving on University Avenue by extending the left turn lanes, helping that left turn movement that is up at Cougar Boulevard that has some impact on this signal, and improve traffic signal just by more efficiently handling the traffic at this intersection. So the proposed changes for this intersection can kind of be broken out by the road that we're on. The main goal is to realign Canyon Road on the east side to square up the intersection. Right now, it comes in at an angle that's not really ideal. And by realigning that intersection, we can improve the visibility for all members of the traveling public, for the pedestrians, for the bicyclists, and for the people who are driving through this intersection. It helps people to be able to see each other and be aware of what's going on. We're going to eliminate one of the existing east side pedestrian crosswalks across the free right. This, helps us to move pedestrians to a place where they have a more managed, more controlled crossing. It's safer if they can cross where the signal is. Other improvements on Canyon Road, they're not necessarily on this list, but we are adding painted green bicycle boxes on Canyon Road. We're adding a sidewalk to the south side of Canyon Road to help pedestrian traffic as they move there. And then we're also adding a through lane to provide access to BYU's Western campus right now and as it develops in the future. And then for University Avenue itself, we're going to be closing that free right, like I mentioned before. This will reduce the overall length of the crossing and consolidate all those crossing movements to a more controlled setting. Pedestrians crossing at Canyon Road right now have some issues where there's some issues with visibility, and there's some issues where the shoulder lane that exists right now has bicyclists traveling on it. Drivers can tend to encroach on that shoulder as they take that free right. They take it at high speed. The exit to the Zions Bank property is impacted. It's difficult to see vehicles that are entering that free right as you leave the Zions Bank. So there's some improvements to safety by removing that free right. We're adding a northbound left turn lane, again, to improve access to BYU's Western campus. And then we are adding some short medians to both the north and south side to help with those left turn movements, both onto 1060 by the Zions Bank into the BYU property. And then we're also using a center median to make sure we don't have traffic trying to turn left southbound onto Canyon Road from University Avenue. We know that that's an area that gets used a lot by traffic trying to turn left onto Cougar Boulevard. So potential impacts of this project are the raised medians. We do know that they impact people's access to parcels and to properties along the road. We're keeping them short in this case, and the main benefit of them is safety. That's our main concern, is improving safety. It can be a difficult thing to manage safety, as we have drivers trying to enter a two-way left turn lane from both directions, trying to go to opposite sides of the road. It presents some conflicts that we're trying to help alleviate. And then the realignment of Zions Bank. So with us removing the free right, we're removing the access or the exit from Zions Bank from that free right onto University Avenue. Vehicles will still be able to either stay in the right turn pocket and go back onto Canyon Road, or go up northbound on University Avenue. All right, Lee, I think you wanted to have Tyler move into this one, right?
I'm over here talking away with my mute on. We're going to have Tyler walk us through the design in a little more detail. So let me get that shown here. Can you see that, Tyler?
Can. Tyrell did a great job in giving us an overview of the improvements that we're looking at this intersection. Lee, if you would zoom into the intersection. Let's start there, and then I'd like to go along each leg of the intersection. So as she zooms in, you're going to see the realignment of Canyon Road off to the right to the east direction. That improves safety by squaring up the intersection, and continues to provide the dual lefts. As we look along the south side of the intersection, so as we go south towards Zions Bank, you'll see the yellow lines there, just to help everybody understand. When we talk about the raised medians, you can see the left arrows. That is just a short distance of that. And again, as Tyrell mentioned, by including just that short distance, it improves safety. It helps control turning movements to make sure that we prioritize and keep the signal optimized as it's running, but also make sure that we don't have conflicting movements going into accesses. You'll see as we zoom in towards the Zions Bank, the way that access is being configured, accessing onto Canyon or onto University Avenue rather than onto that free right going onto Canyon Road. So you can see what that looks like. That will restrict left turns out of there. We have been in contact with Zions Bank and initiated that, and so far those conversations are going really well. As we continue north, maybe just one point before you move on, off to the left side on the BYU property, there's an access. One of the things that we're doing, and I'll try to point them out as we go along this design, is we're actually consolidating accesses where we can, and coordinating with those property owners. And it's just improved safety as you consolidate those accesses and try to get it all to a single access, especially when there's a signalized intersection close by. So as you go towards the north, you'll see, go ahead.
I couldn't get my mouse. I apologize.
No worries. So let's spend just a second here. You'll see how the free right has been closed off. We still maintain a right turn lane, and that will be dedicated. But we do show closing that right turn lane. You'll also see that we have added, if you go just a little bit further north, there are 2 crosswalks crossing US 189 or University Avenue. As we've talked about with the projected improvements of BYU, pedestrian crossings are predicted to drastically increase here. That's been a big focus of ours as we've talked about the improvements of the intersection, and those crosswalks have been a big part of that. So we'll have crossings on both sides. Off to the left, you'll see the access has been created into the BYU property. So the 4th leg, or the west leg of the intersection, as we've been calling it. The plans of BYU's property we can talk about later, but you can kind of see that we've accommodated access into the signalized intersection by creating those actual lanes designation, which will be coordinated by the traffic signal. Let's continue north along University Avenue. You'll see Tyrell mentioned earlier the median. You can see that there, and that helps control the left turns on a Canyon Road. Some of you might wonder why we don't allow left turns on a Canyon Road. The geometry is a big part of it. That left turn movement and the alignment of Canyon Road is really hard. We'll have conflicting turning movements with traffic on Canyon Road.
Tyler, can you explain when you talk about the roadway geometry, what that means?
Sure. If you look at Canyon Road, you'll notice that it doesn't tee in, like a 90-degree angle. As you go away from the intersection, it starts to angle towards the north. If I'm going south on University Avenue and I'm trying to turn left onto Canyon Road, that angle makes it extremely difficult, especially for large trucks with trailers. And their trailers, as they track, will have issues and create potential conflicts with that left turns. So we try to avoid that the best we can. This does improve that at this intersection, but as we've modeled things and look at that, still doesn't meet the requirements. The good news is, as we look towards that, is we've looked at the traffic analysis, and not only at this intersection, but it's been coordinated with the traffic signals along University Avenue. And these improvements don't drastically change that. So some might consider that left turn important. The good news is we can make these changes and those needs can still be met at those adjacent intersections. I was mentioning on the north leg, as we go towards Cougar Boulevard, that raised median It does close left turns into Starbucks. We've also been in conversation with Starbucks, and we're working through that with them. We're also consolidating another one of the accesses into the BYU property along the west side of University Avenue. Let's go along Canyon Road really quick if we can. A lot of you are probably familiar with the striping and bike lanes, active transportation improvements that were recently completed with Cougar Boulevard. This project does not have the medians, but we're proposing extending the buffered bike lanes and some of the pavement markings along here to create that consistency from BYU, Cougar Boulevard, and into the BYU West campus. So you'll see the green that designates conflicts points with traffic. So it helps the cyclists anticipate vehicles and vice versa. The other thing that we're doing along Canyon Road with the anticipation of those increased pedestrians is we're reconstructing the south side of Canyon Road and creating a sidewalk. Again, another improved access along Canyon Road to the intersection and eventually across to University Avenue. And those improvements will go all the way to Bulldog or Cougar Boulevard. That's the main the points of things that are being proposed with the project.
Great. So we've got a few questions in the chat. I'll turn off the design, but panelists, as you are responding, if you'd like me to turn it back on, just let me know. So the first question is, what is the project budget and where are the funds coming from? Tyrell, can you speak to that?
Definitely. Let me turn my camera back on. So currently the project budget is set at $2.8 million is what we're estimating total project costs to be. Project funds are coming from three different parties. They're coming from UDOT, from Provo, and from BYU. Our final agreement hasn't been signed, but that's what we're working with right now is funds from those three sources.
Thank you. Okay, will there be a dedicated right turn signal arrow which will remain green during most intersection movements in order to imitate the soon to be deleted free right? So Tyler?
Yeah, currently that is not being included. Again, part of what allows for that is the left turns or restricts that. That's something that we were talking about. We just completed the traffic analysis and we're in the process of refining the signal timing. So right now it's not currently part of it, but it's not necessarily off the board either.
Will there be LPIs at this intersection? So LPIs are leading pedestrian intervals. I know UDOT is considering them at Cougar and elsewhere. In a single week, I saw drivers nearly right hook pedestrians crossing University. Yeah. So we did look at, maybe Tyrell, can you tell us a little bit about the crash data? Because I see Leo's question next, which is about pedestrian deaths in the area. So maybe we could talk about crashes and then we can talk about LPIs.
Yeah, so as part of the project, we did do a safety analysis of the area. We go back for about 5 years and look at accidents. We had, I want to say 55, and Tyler can correct me if I'm wrong, but around 55 different incidents just located at this intersection. The majority of those were vehicle accidents, but there were, I think, 2 or 3 pedestrian involved accidents. One was a serious injury accident that happened in that free right that we're removing. Which is one of the reasons we're heavily considering this, is because that is such a dangerous movement where the vehicles don't need to slow down as much. So yeah, we did look at it. there were 2 serious injury accidents. One was a motorcycle, one was a pedestrian. So
Tyler, can you explain what an LPA is?
Yeah, so that deals with signal timing, right? We're allowing pedestrians to cross at different times related to the traffic. Right now, we are not planning to provide that. One of the balances is trying to keep traffic moving while we provide the safety improvements for the pedestrians. So there's a lot of traffic along US 80, along University Avenue. So like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of focus towards trying to optimize the signal timing, not only at this intersection, but along the corridor, and try to find that right balance. Just because we aren't considering it today, I will say that there's a lot of discussions about the signal timing and that optimization. And so just like with all our traffic signals, we'll do something today, and the ability to control them from, you know, different areas. You know, you don't have to necessarily be on site, but definitely watch those things and adjust them. And that's something that we're talking about and we'll watch.
So Paul is asking about the proportion of the contributions by each of the 3 parties. I don't know if we have kind of a ballpark there on proportionality.
Well, I can talk to the proportionality of the currently allocated funds. Those are a 1/3 split between all the parties so far, but I don't know exactly where those are going to fall with the final budget. So, but right now for what we're funded with, we're 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
So James's question and Paul's question kind of go together, which is that left turn to southbound University Avenue for bikes feels awkward. And also, what is the future plan for landscaping in that vacated area? So I'm going to turn that into a larger question, which is sort of what is the scope of this project in relation to a lot of changes that are coming in the area? And maybe Gordon will take that one for us.
I'll answer the landscaping first. Right now, we've had discussions with BYU that we would allow them to landscape as part of their project. And then in the future, when they figure out what they're going to do, then it would turn into something else. But right now, we anticipate it to be something that they would maintain and take care of, kind of like the whole strip they have coming up University. There's no design yet at this point, but I'm sure they'll come up with something that looks great and is water wise.
Okay. Thanks, Gordon. Tyrell, maybe you can talk a little bit about the bike infrastructure and future plans there.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the comments we actually got a lot online was buffered bike lanes on University Avenue. So just to answer a bit of that question, the department is currently looking at a separate project in the future to address the bike lanes, the buffered bike lanes. There's a gap in the buffered bike lane system right now that kind of exists from University Parkway to the south. This project is more focused at just the intersection, but we are looking at a project in the future that would, provide more of those bike improvements. And we are doing the bike improvements on Canyon Road as part of the project.
So Aaron had written in the chat earlier that the bicycle master plan calls for a cycle track on Canyon Road. And I am not familiar with that, but we've seen some comments on the UDOT input page as well, asking about changing the width of Canyon Road or the utilization of Canyon Road in some way. So Tyrell, can you speak to that a little bit?
Sorry, I was reading the comment, so could you repeat the question?
No problem.
I can probably take part of that, and maybe Gordon
ahead,
would want to weigh in as well. I think it's important to know that with those cycle tracks, and Tyrell mentioned it, for University Avenue, it's a big picture thing, right? And sometimes we wish we could do everything with one project, and it's just not realistic. So I think understanding it's on a master plan, and Gordon can definitely weigh in, but a cycle track is takes more than what you just get in, one stretch of Canyon Road between those two intersections.
So what we're doing is the city just adopted a safety action plan, and we looked at what we call our high incident, roadways, and about 3% of our roads create about 70% of our fatalities and our major injury accidents. And so we're recognizing a couple of corridors that need to be addressed. And so this project came very quickly because we met with BYU. We were told thousands of students are going to cross. And in the summer last year, we saw hundreds and hundreds of students crossing this intersection, and we just have to get this done. The funding for this project wasn't necessarily set aside by any of these agencies, but everybody agreed to get together to make this a safe crossing in the short term. We're looking at how we can get funding that would address our high incident corridors, which includes University. And that's going to be a follow-up project. So this one right now, we need to get it in place. We want to show the bicycle access and make it as safe as we can with the budget we have. And then when we do the full length of the project, we're not putting things helter-skelter or having to tear out. We do it as a planned, carefully thought out project. And so we are still, that's still our master plan, still what we want to do, but we want to do that in the next project. Right now we're focused. We'll have place set for the bicycle community, and then we'll finish it up with a bigger project later.
Thanks, Gordon. Oli, the question is, why does BYU need 5 lanes? Maybe you can talk a little bit about what your process is there for that West Campus.
Where are we talking the 5 lanes?
So I think what they're looking at is in the new entrance, right? So you have a right turn, a through, dual lefts, and then a 1 lane coming in. So maybe, yeah, so I'm thinking maybe you could talk a little bit about what the process is to determine what will happen on this property, and then Tyler can talk about the lane configuration.
Yeah, we just, Brigham Young University functions and has projects approved by our board, our reigning board, the Board of Education, and the board that guides Brigham Young University. So as far as projects go, we cannot do anything until we have their approval. We've suggested a number of ideas. We have some thoughts, but until we get permission to do something there, we can't move forward with anything or announce anything because we don't have anything approved or know anything for sure. Why is there 5 lanes? We're working with Provo City and with UDOT to make sure that whatever is put in there has sufficient access, ingress, egress, and can deal with whatever traffic comes in and out. We do know one thing, that the property will be heavily used, and that whatever is approved will have a significant number of patrons, guests, students, whatever coming from main campus and the parking in the area to access the property.
Thank you.
To speak to the lane configurations, it's important at signalized intersections to kind of understand how they function. And there's equipment that detects vehicles, and we like to put vehicles making different movements, lefts, throughs, and rights in their own lanes. Otherwise, we get what we call a false call. If somebody's in the through lane and they're trying to turn right, that can tell us the traffic signal and the timing something different than what's really there. So we like to designate The lefts, the throughs, and the rights separately. There is a dual left at that intersection or on the BYU side. And that's purely because there's dual lefts on the other side. It's not necessarily needed for the BYU property, but that width is already there. We need to line up lanes through the intersections to make sure they function and they're safe. And so that's why there's that additional lane on that side. And there's also a comment that you know, talks about some of the other intersections and the configurations that you see. And I just make a comment that just because you see it somewhere else doesn't mean it functions the way it could, especially when we're creating something and we have the opportunity to create something and do it right, and have the width to do it. And I think that's why we're proposing it here.
I saw some of the other comments coming in, and I think there is a good idea that I agree with Tyler. We need to line up intersections across the way so that it just makes it safer for the intersection. But right now, today, without the redevelopment of that property, it may be worthwhile to looking at maybe one of those rights could be a refuge lane or, you know, an island or something that would be there. We got to just figure out the traffic movements, how intense those dual lefts really need to be. The reason I think they're there today is they don't have a ton of stacking. And so that may be valuable for BYU. So I think maybe we could take a quick look at that one more time and just see, maybe until that property redevelops, is that going to really have the dual lefts volume? So I think the layout, the lane configuration is really important, but you know, let's find out if we do need the dual lefts to empty out the volume. And if we don't, then maybe it would be valuable to look at something with the.
Which lefts are you talking about, Gordon? Because I got confused.
Oh, the dual lefts coming
This
out of,
one?
yeah, the dual lefts coming out of the old Provo High property. I'm just looking at them. And, you know, if we have that level of volume, then we need to keep the dual lefts going. If we don't, maybe there's an opportunity to do an island through there just because of how dense the population of pedestrians are going to be in that area. I'm just, again, there's no engineering in any of my comments. I just saw some thoughts.
That's definitely something we can talk about for sure, Gordon. You know, right now
I like the dual lefts, but there may be, we gotta just verify what the volume of traffic going in now there is in the short term. And then when that redevelops, we could look at it again and see what it really needs to be.
Okay, because I read that comment as.
Okay, maybe I misinterpreted it.
No, it is a good point, because I was wondering the same thing, but the way I read that comment was actually a ped refuge here.
Oh.
So.
Oh, I was thinking, okay, I didn't read the whole comment. I'm gonna put my glasses on next time.
But I think your point, I actually think your point is well made, and that's something I think the team should look at, right? Does that dual left need to be there, or could it be an island or something else? Because if the point is the geometry of lining up the lanes.
I want the people to cross all the way across University. I don't want anybody in the middle of that. So I want to make sure we have good timing to get people out of that intersection. Just
James says he'd like both, please. We'll look into it. How's that?
We'll make sure we have the timing, and we'll certainly look at other things. But my comments I was addressing to the BYU or to the old Provo High site. So anyway, I apologize.
John asked, is there any reason the left turn restriction doesn't extend all the way from this intersection to Cougar Boulevard? So I think that's the median, the raised median extension. Is there physical raised median here now? Or why does this not connect all the way, Tyler?
There's not one today, and that's something that's been discussed with the team. Part of it's the balance of that access control. That's something that will continue to be talked about today. The plan is to put it to that point. There's also been discussions as BYU finalizes their plans and I think that I remember comments that that'll be looked at holistically along there, all those accesses, and if those have been addressed and that's an opportunity to extend it, I think we would, and that might eliminate the need for that median.
Thank you. Paul says there are less than 100 parking stalls on the West Campus property. Will BYU be funneling traffic to this intersection from the larger parking lot north of the building? So, Paul, are you asking about parking from the Cougar Boulevard side, coming onto University and back in at this intersection?
I think he may be talking about moving. So right now, those two different parking lots are separated by some sidewalk. There's a little bit of grade difference. And he could potentially be asking about BYU's plans for interconnecting those two parking lots. That's how I read it, but I could be wrong.
I can't find him to unmute him, so I don't know if he's still in the meeting.
No, I'm here. It's just there's
Great.
parallel with University Avenue. There's less than 100 car spots. So the 5-lane access at that point would be for servicing, less than 100 cars or, stalls at that point. So I'm still trying to understand where the volume of cars is coming from that will require 5 lanes.
Ole, can you answer that one?
Yeah, the situation at Provo High School, the former Provo High School, is a temporary situation. And the parking lot directly in front of it, the long skinny parking lot there along the east, currently may access that, but it's going to be tied together with the large parking lot. And in order to not have multiple exits onto University Avenue and the Cougar Boulevard, and to have cars coming out right and left all over, we plan on working with UDOT and with Provo City to make sure that it's enough to empty the parking lot sufficiently, but not to have an overabundance of entrances and exits. And so that little fence that currently ties or separates the two lots, that is not a permanent situation and will go away at some point.
I think also, Ole, the intent is some sort of redevelopment at some point, right? It doesn't just stay parking lots.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. I think, I believe it was Gordon that said, and I know UDOT feels this way, we're not looking to do something that's just going to work for the next 2 years or 2.5 years or whatever. We're looking for something that's designed to fit the future and that's going to work well into the future, so that we're not going back and having to remodel something shortly after it's put in the first place. We're looking to the future.
Yeah, so a couple more comments. I think Eric is asking a similar question, which is, does Canyon Road have enough traffic to justify the 5-lane section? Tyler, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I think it kind of goes to what Ole is saying about thinking into the future with development here.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit more Gordon than, this transportation master plan and how that changes over time. But the intersection specifically, yeah, if you look at the traffic analysis, we need that lane configuration at the intersection as traffic goes along Canyon Road, as it continues to change. Maybe long-term, maybe not, but that'd probably be a Gordon for his long-term plan.
So Canyon Road, so this project is this intersection right now for the pedestrians. In the long term, the city has a transportation master plan. I suspect a year from now, we're going to be opening up for public hearing for adoption a year later. So, because we go through a 5-year cycle, and so it's been there. I don't remember, I wasn't here. So, but I believe we're about a year out to start looking, and at that point, I think we're gonna look at a lot of roads, a lot of different aspects, and we'll make we'll make some important decisions. I don't think we have the authority to override what's in the transportation plan today. It's going to stay, this project isn't that project, and so we'll stick with what we're doing today, and then we'll look at some things probably a year from now.
Thanks, Gordon. Tyrell, Paul has asked when the final cost sharing agreement is anticipated to be completed.
So I don't have any hard or fast date on that, but I would anticipate February or March, we should have that completed.
I can tell you when it'll be completed. It'll be before the project goes out to bid. So
That's the number one thing that.
So
And
if you see,
are we aiming to advertise it in March? Is that the goal?
Ideally, yeah, there's some things we have to work through with some right of way and temporary construction easements. We don't need to acquire right of way, but we need to acquire some temporary construction easements that allow us to reconstruct the Zions Bank and Starbucks accesses. So all goes according to plan. Oh, go ahead.
Tyrell, if I could, one of the things these dates that we're talking about, they're just estimates. So really, it takes time to go through these agreements and get them, make sure they're fleshed out and that all parties can agree. So we just need the time to do that. We're looking at that springtime, whether it's February or March, it could slide. We just have to give it the time it needs in order to complete the agreements.
And I was going to add, we also are having this public hearing, which means we also have to take time to go back and review all the comments and examine the design and see if there are things that we can adjust and change, including this discussion around that west exit and the north possible median extension, pedestrian refuge, some of the other questions that you're asking here. So I will say a couple of things, and I'll put the slide up again at the end, but we do have a UDOT public input site. I will put the link in the chat. You can sign up for email updates there. If you registered for this meeting, I will send you an email when the meeting recording and summary is available, and then you'll be added to the email update list. That way you can also share your written comments to the email address that's in the chat. If you don't put them on the website, either place is fine, and we'll update through that email list when the design is finalized, what the final concept looks like, the summary of your comments, when the project advertises, when a contractor is on board, and then during construction. So certainly we're here to share that information. Okay, Aaron had one about, are you planning on 2-stage turn queue boxes and intersection crossing markers? Aaron, and you're not even like an engineering or traffic planning professor, so. Tyler,
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you that one.
those are great comments. We've talked big picture, and some of those things that make sense, and that's definitely part of that long, vision that's going to happen along University Avenue. Right now, they're not included. We'll look at them again. We talked about them. It's just trying to create that connectivity where you send cyclists to certain locations to make sure that they have that facility. So we'll talk about it again. Right now, you can see they're not there. You can see in Cougar Boulevard, there's things that are there. So it's kind of that big picture plan.
Aaron asks, does BYU or Zions Bank pick up additional space in the property that's forfeited by closing the free right? That is UDOT property, correct, Tyrell?
Actually, I
Or is it
believe that
city?
is Provo City property.
I don't believe Zion's going to get any more parking spaces. we'll work with UDOT on how to configure that landscaped area, and there might be some parking, there may not. I'm not. We'll have to look at the design. We want it to look good, and BYU wants a good looking entrance into that, and so we're going to make it look really great. And so we anticipate a very pretty area, and if there's some land left over that makes sense for parking, there might be some parking for BYU, but it's not, the goal isn't to create more parking, it's to make it look nice.
So you can see on the exhibit that Tyler prepared, the pink line is the existing property lines.
Right.
So, and then this new sidewalk is here to the west and north. All right. Could a shortcut bike and ped path extend through that freed up space instead of taking them to the intersection? I mean, I wonder if people will use that anyway. If the old asphalt is there, I wonder if people will ride or walk that way. But the intent is to bring pedestrians along this sidewalk path. Is that correct?
You know, when we probably need to look at that site, but the problem is we're not going to be ready with what we're going to do with that site, and we need to get the that right eliminated. So I think these are great questions, and they're really good comments that we ought to master plan this corner to make it not only nice but functional. And there's probably some opportunities to put a bench and other things that just make it look pleasant in that area, because I think BYU is going to do a good job with their redevelopment and with that parking lot. We ought to figure out some stuff, but I don't think we're prepared to do that yet. And so we'll sit down with BYU once this project gets moving forward, and we'll figure out something. And one of the things I want to really comment is we need to get that sidewalk built up Canyon Road. And so just getting that in place, if we have to make some changes here when we redesign that, we'll work with BYU to do that. And that will be a project we'll do next phase to see if we need to have pedestrian or bike or scooter cut through. I don't necessarily have any problem with those, but we'll have to let's figure something out and master plan that a little bit better. So there's nothing I can say to it right now.
Thanks, Gordon. We've got about 10 minutes left. Leo had asked to make a comment, so if we're okay with that, we'll allow it. Also, if there's any other questions or comments that you can put in the chat, please do so. And I will, here we go, Leo. Let me see if we can get you unmuted. Is it letting you unmute?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm totally opposed to this project being done right now. When I was in high school, nobody cared about me crossing that street twice a day, every day, hundreds or thousands of students back and forth. I just think it's ironic that all of a sudden BYU buys the property and now let's spend millions of dollars fixing something that I don't see an urgency at this point. There's other places in this town that need more information. The reason why I asked about the deaths, because there haven't been any, but on 5th North in my neighborhood, I'm the neighborhood chair for the Joaquin neighborhood, which represents 20, 30,000 students, okay, and have been for 40 years, not as a neighborhood chair, but I've lived there. I have witnessed 2 deaths on 500 North. I've been asking for upgrades for the flashing lights or whatever at the intersections so that the students can cross. We cannot see them at night. We cannot see them. They think we can see them because they see our headlights. We cannot see them. My biggest nightmare is hitting one of those students. Okay. I have seen 2 deaths personally. One of the deaths happened in my arms. It was a BYU student, but nobody cares about the BYU students there. But all of a sudden now at this intersection, oh, let's do all this. Let's spend $2.8 million. I don't know what it would cost to put in the crossing things, let alone when BYU closed the road through campus. 8th North now is a nightmare. You have 20,000 students going back and forth every day. And the busiest day is Sunday. And people don't realize that. But now we want to spend all this money because BYU bought the property. I agree that these changes would make this intersection better. At 5th North at 5 o'clock and at 8 o'clock in the morning in Provo, you can't get anywhere. I don't leave my house because it takes you an hour and a half. 5th North is backed up from 200 East all the way to 5th North every night. And we're not doing anything about it. So why all of a sudden now, just because it's BYU? Don't get me wrong, I don't hate BYU. Graduated from BYU. My mom worked there. Biggest BYU fan. When they lose, my heart breaks. But this is not a priority right now. All of a sudden, this comes to priority because BYU bought the property. They knew about this when they bought it. And so I'm totally opposed to it. I'm going to try and do everything I can to get this delayed and get some of these other things put in so I can save some students' lives. And if you don't care about the students' lives, only in this intersection, sad day. Thank you.
Leo, thanks, Leo. I would love to know more about the intersections or locations specifically, and I think we can. That looks like is that a Provo Street?
It's
Yeah,
not
it's a
UDOT,
Provo
it's
Street.
Provo. And I've
Okay.
been harping on this for 30 years. 30 years. And I still can, I mean, no deaths at this intersection. And I've got 2 that I was there for on 500 North and nobody cares. That's my problem here. Okay. So, yeah, and I'm going to give an earful to the council. I'm going to also call my legislators and try to get this thing delayed because this is not where the money needs to be spent.
Hey, Leah, sorry for intervening, but if I may for a minute, Leo, this is Kehan Shur with Provo City. So if you remember, I spoke to you about maybe a week or 2 ago regarding the 500 North intersection all the way to 800 North for Joaquin neighborhood. So as part of some improvements, what I'm planning on right now is I'm applying for a CDBG fund. And that fund will be specifically used to make improvements such as crosswalks, bulb outs, better lighting, RFBs along the 500 North, starting from 300 East all the way to 600 East. I'm looking at different paths, trying to find the better spot that I could actually use these funds to target and make these improvements along to provide what a safe path for students to get into school. So that's what I'm doing right now. The application, I'm almost done with the application. It's a little bit of a process, but I am paying a close attention towards making improvements for that specific location that you're talking about.
Thank you, Kehan. Leo, you somehow, I think I muted you again. I apologize if you want to unmute. But also, if you'll send us your contact information, like I said, we'll make sure to get it to Gordon at Provo City, and he and Kehan and his team can coordinate as well.
I commented on the first thing that was sent out and it has all that, but as a neighborhood chair, everybody knows my email and all that. And so.
Great.
But anyway.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? We have about 5 minutes left. In the interim, while we, oh, Aaron, I should know. A gap in the buffered bike lane. What did you mean earlier by there being a gap in the buffered bike lane? Currently, there's a buffered bike lane on University Avenue from 5th to Riverwoods. Is UDOT converting some of those buffered bike lanes into protected bike lanes? I actually think what we were talking about was a future University Avenue south.
Yes, yeah, from University Parkway, where they do not exist south of there, to the south. Aaron's shaking his head. We may have to just be outside of this meeting, Aaron, and have some discussions.
Okay.
But yeah, we're looking at bike improvements along University. That's basically what I wanted to get across. Whatever form those take, it's, you know.
Okay, well, I will reiterate that our comment period is open until January 6th. And we'll be reviewing all of the comments from today, including the chat and the recording, which we'll share. When the comment period closes, we'll follow up again in January with all of you. Feel free to submit more comments online or to email. You can give us a call on our hotline. I'll put that in the chat one more time. And then Eric asked this question, would Provo ever consider closing this section of Canyon Road? I think you answered it already, Gordon, but
Okay.
maybe you can close us out.
Just really quick, the city council would have to, that'd be a change in our general plan and take a great deal of public hearing and process. So that'd be a political decision at some point. There'd be engineering traffic numbers that have to back it up, but we can't do that with this project. But it could happen in the future, depend on stuff.
Okay, any last questions? Lost my screen. If not, we'll say thank you and have a happy holiday season. Stay safe and warm out there. Good night.